I'm Toni Esselin.
And I'm Aimee Bernard.
And we are here to help make it make sense.
This is the podcast that takes complicated science and breaks it down into easy to understand language.
So buckle up, buttercups. You are in for a bumpy ride.
Okay, we're back.
We are back. And we are going to talk about generally the questions that we get about the childhood vaccination schedule. I think one of the reasons we wanted to bring this up is that because of all of the publicity behind the COVID vaccines, vaccines in general, just the normal stuff that we've been doing for the last few decades, the percentage of people that are doing that has gone down. And so we wanted to kind of revisit the schedule, talk about some of the questions that I have gotten as a pediatrician. I think Dr. Aimee has also gotten with her vaccine advocacy work.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's it. So you want to?
Sure.
How do you want to start it off?
So I will, I'll start it off by just saying, like, probably the question I think I get the most, and I'm sure you do too, is why are there so many? Why are there so many vaccines on the schedule? And I think I can start it off by saying there are a lot of viruses and bacteria that are trying to kill us.
That's true.
There are a lot of pathogens, germs out there that their whole thing is to survive. And one of the ways that they try to survive best is by changing, mutating, taking over the host. And with a lot of all these vaccines, it's against, these are against germs, so pathogens, viruses and bacteria that would like to live in the human. So we have vaccines to fight and defend against all of these pathogens that are trying to take over the human body and use that to make more virus and to survive and live. So that's kind of the real answer is there are just a lot of viruses and bacteria that just really want to take over our body. We are a very good host for a lot of, viruses and bacteria, like, get all comfortable, move in, take over, make a lot of kids, so make more virus and then spew it out to the neighborhood, right? Yeah. So that's kind of the way, I like to think of it. But I mean, that's a little bit lighthearted, but it is true. These are all against pathogens that really do cause serious consequences. Like we're not vaccinating against anything that's mild or not harmful, across the board. Like these are only viruses and bacteria that could cause serious injury, long-term consequences, and death. So that's what we vaccinate against.
That's right.
Yeah. So that's why. And, we do have quite a few vaccines on the schedule, but again, it's because we're trying to prevent serious harm or injury or death in the kids that get these vaccines, as well as, adults in later years that get certain vaccines.
Mm-hmm. So I'll follow that up with a question that I get a lot. So like, well, doesn't that overwhelm the immune system?
Mm-hmm. I love this question.
Yeah.
And because of this question, I travel with a whiteboard and marker. I'm just kidding. Although, wouldn't that be fun?
Oh my God.
Yeah. So my favorite way to answer this is that not everyone understands that. So the immune system in our body, we have billions of immune cells, and I mean billions, like with a B. So billions of cells, and the immune cells in our body that train to defend us against these deadly diseases when we get a vaccine. These are called B cells and T cells. And these particular cells, again, we have billions of each type. of B cell and T cell. Each of those cells has a different target. Each individual cell has a different target. Like you might have one B cell in your body that its target would be some little piece of chickenpox. And you might have another B cell in your body whose target is some little piece of SARS-CoV-2, so the virus that causes COVID-19. And they're all specialists, essentially. And some of them might have overlapping, like we probably have multiple B cells that would combat chickenpox and multiple that would combat SARS-CoV-2, but we're not going to have like we don't have large amounts of any cell, any target for a bunch of cells. I gotta hang on a second. I gotta mute this for a second. We're gonna have to cut this out, so hang on. Okay. My stupid dog, who I love, but she annoys me. Okay, so we have all these different cells in our body, all these different immune cells, and they all have, for the most part, billions of them, they all have a different target. Whenever you get a vaccine, you're only gonna activate those cells that have that as their target. Like when I get the SARS-CoV-2 vaccine, the spike proteins that are being made, I only have a few immune cells in my body that will even be specific or target that spike protein. All the other billion are not going to respond. So I'm only calling into play those that are specialists for SARS-CoV-2. So only a couple of them will respond. They're going to divide, make more. They're going to make their own army. And that's what's training every time I encounter a new germ or a vaccine. So all the other billion cells are just going to hang out and do nothing because they're not specific for, they're not targeted against like that particular pathogen. So most of the billions of cells in my body won't even respond. They're like, that's not what they're trained for. So an analogy that I like to think of, is when you go to a hospital, you know that there are all kinds of different doctors in the hospital. Some doctors are specialists for the heart. And if you have a heart problem or a heart disease, you go see a heart doctor, so a cardiologist. If you have a disease for your lungs, you go see a pulmonologist because they're specialists in the lung. If you need a kidney transplant, you go and see a kidney transplant surgeon. They're specialists for that. So it's the same thing with our immune cells responding to either just inhaling things like a freshly coughed pocket of air or something in a vaccine. Only the cells that are specialists for that germ or pathogen are going to respond. So we're not overwhelming the immune system because we have so many specialists in our body, only those that are like geared to respond to that target that particular pathogen will respond. Does that help at all?
Yeah, and I think what I want to clarify is that because it's so specialized of a response, your body's not feeling like it's under attack. And so what ends up happening is that you are not getting infected with COVID and the flu and your diphtheria and your polio. Like if you get them all at the same time, you're not getting infected, which would require a little immune army to then respond at a rate like this chaotic rate to try to see what they could do to eliminate what it is that they need to eliminate. Especially if it hasn't been seen before. Yeah. If they haven't been seen before, it's like training and fighting at the same time, which is what your immune system is doing versus when you're giving a vaccine, which is a very small dose compared to what you would get if you were in the wild, like Dr. Aimee likes to say. If you're in the wild, the dose that you're getting, we can't quantify it. We have no idea how much it actually is. And so when you're getting that wild infection, your body's like, what's this? And it starts to like do its thing where it's like trying to save you, making more. It's all very haphazard. All kinds of chemicals are being released in your body to kind of activate your immune system. And that's what can overwhelm you. With the vaccine, that's not the point. The point is like, hey guys, this is what it looks like. Be prepared. Start training. So of course you're not going to feel great. You'll feel a little bit, maybe a little bit under the weather, but you're not sick, right? You're not sick, hospitalized, sick, because your whole immune system isn't responding to every single, what we call antigens, which are the little pieces of the germs that we introduce into your body for it to recognize it so that it can respond. So you're not getting what I think is hard to understand is that if we're saying we're giving you a vaccine to protect you from an infection, and the way that we do it is we trick the immune system into believing it's getting infected, then I can see how a parent is like, well, now you're giving my baby 5 infections at the same time. Like, that's not okay. And I think that we need to reframe that a little bit and say, not that, yes, we are quote unquote tricking it, but we're actually trying to, we're actually being very honest about this is what it looks like. Immune system, get ready in an organized fashion. This is how to get ready. So, because if you do see it in the wild, now you can fight it. And sometimes you won't even feel it. Like, you can get infected. And if you have enough immune response to the viral infection, to the viral infection, right? If you have enough of immune response to the vaccine, for example, when you get the viral infection, sometimes that fight happens and you're not even aware.
Right.
Sometimes you are aware, but sometimes you're not aware, right? And the goal is to keep you functioning, alive, out of the hospital, and not sick. And so if we're giving you 5 vaccines, that doesn't mean that we're getting 5 fights. We're doing 5 trainings.
Yeah.
And the dose that we're giving you is so little that it's not enough to overwhelm your system. Is the answer. And another way that I like to answer this question is just that your body's made for this. We're getting assaulted on a minute by minute basis by the environment. With people, I was telling my husband, I just as an aside for you to understand, I was coming out of work, coming out of my clinic, and I usually have my mask on, and I was going into the parking lot and it's outside. So I was like, this is safe. I'm safe for me to take my mask off, right? So I take my mask off so I could pay. And this guy who's in a rush comes up behind me and exhales his entire pocket of air from his lungs onto my face. Directly onto my face. And I was like, because if you're online, and then he was exasperated because I made it to the line before him. I wasn't even rushing. I was like, la, 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 let me go to the parking. Let me pay my parking. And here's this guy in a rush. And he goes, right on my face. Yeah. And I was like, see, this is why I need to wear this mask forever.
Yeah.
I'm going outside because
even outdoors.
But anyway, I'm just saying that like we are assaulted all the time. You're touching things. You're outside rolling around in the dirt. My son had a soccer game today. He's rolling around in kind of duck poo, I guess, that's out there in the mud. There's all kinds of stuff, right? Yeah. And we're just under assault all the time. And so the amount that we're getting in these vaccines is not enough to overwhelm. I mean, we've been doing this for so long. We would have known that by now, to be honest. We would have known that.
Well, along those lines, Paul Offit, who's at the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, he has published, a lot of books and journal articles and things. But and the reason why I'm saying this is I when I teach my medical and PA students about the vaccine or the immunization schedules, I actually use a table from a Journal of Pediatrics article from him, where they've actually counted the number of antigens, so pieces of pathogen, again, non-harmful pathogen that's put into these vaccines, and looking at the nearly full immunization schedule, the number of antigens, so again, bits of non-harmful pathogen that are in the vaccines, like your entire schedule.
Pathogen meaning germ.
Yeah, germs. So, which we've said many, many times, people should, pathogen, germ, same thing. Is that it's like close to 125 little bits of the pathogen or germ for all those vaccines. That is something you could probably get off of the surface of, like, I don't know, a doorknob at a post office as an example. I mean, it's just
elevator button.
Yeah, I mean, just like, yeah, the amount of
I guess that I was at trying to pay.
Yes, exactly, from that guy. So the point is, there's just not very much. And like Dr. Toni said, our immune system is built for this. Every single cell in our body is a specialist that is going to respond to a certain thing. And for every vaccine we get, there would probably be, a few immune cells that will respond and train and build more, divide, make more of themselves to build that army and to train. So we're built for this. We're built to encounter, our immune system can respond to anything that comes our way. And the reason why is we have so much diversity. Each immune cell has its own target. So because of that, we are built to do this, and we could take on more. We could take on more than we do. We are nowhere near overwhelming the immune system at all. So it's really a small amount. It's like a drop in the ocean of all the pathogen and viruses and bacteria and things that are out there that we could encounter in a vaccine. It's like, it is a drop, and then you look at the ocean of what's out there.
And I think for like new moms, new parents, you don't want to cause pain. And that's another thing that we see in the office, a lot of nervous parents who are just like, I don't want to see my baby cry and I don't want to see my baby get hurt. And I'm inflicting that on them. And what I would say is that you also don't want to see your baby really sick and then have to poked multiple times because we're trying to stabilize them, and so this one little shot at 2 months of age that they're never going to even remember. They don't remember any of them until they're like about 2-3 years old, around that age. That's when my son was like, I'm not going to the doctor. That's when they start to remember it. But before then, they don't remember it. It hurts at that moment. And then they're like, where's my rattle and where's my food? Like they're just, they're in that mode, I think the follow-up question to that then would be, well, what's the rationale behind this schedule? Like who put this together, and why every 2 months? What's going on here?
You want me to take that?
Yeah. And then
I'll so we do have different recommendations for different vaccines as far as timing. Some of them are given right away, and just so you know, all of what we recommend is based on clinical trial data. So looking at as the vaccine was being developed and all of the different individuals, whether kid or adult, who were in these vaccine trials, looking to see how many doses, what's the amount of the dose, what's the timing, all these different things that were looked at in the clinical trials. So everything is the result of a lot of efficacy, so meaning how well it works, and then safety data, like is it safe and does it work? And how many times do we have to have it for it to work really well? So the entire schedule is based on clinical data. So I think first of all, we should start with that. Second of all is a lot of these are given based on when the kid would most need to be protected from certain diseases? Like are they going to see, measles, mumps, and rubella right away? Is that something that they should be vaccinated for at age, 1, 2, 3, 4? Like, when are they most likely to see that disease? So we want to make sure they're protected and trained in advance. So all of it is based on that. Another reason for some of this is that, so we know we have to have multiple doses of certain vaccines that we call booster doses, or in the case of the COVID vaccines, we're calling them additional doses, knowing that, there might be multiple additional doses needed. But as far as booster doses, so we can only work with the virus or bacteria at hand. And if that virus or bacteria doesn't stimulate like an amazing immune response, like maybe it's actually it stimulates like a pretty weak or crappy response, we still have to work with it, because that's the germ, and that's what it looks like. And we have to train the immune system on the actual thing, the actual virus or bacteria. So some of those boosters is because those germs just, the immune response is not like amazingly robust. So we have to do it a couple of times to make sure the immune system in all people overall is going to be really, really good. So that's why we have boosters for some vaccines. And then I did want to give a little bit of information about the measles, mumps, and rubella vaccine. This came about as the result of clinical trials too, and looking at how well it works and how safe it is. And that one is recommended at 1 year, so at 12 months. And the reason for that one is, and as an immunologist, I find this very interesting. I know, and I'm sure everyone out there will as well. But with the MMR, I know, with the MMR, because most moms in the US in particular, although I'm sure it's also other countries as well, have been vaccinated for MMR in the past, moms, while they're pregnant, antibody goes across the placenta into the baby to protect the unborn baby. And that's why we recommend a couple of vaccines during pregnancy, like the Tdap vaccine, so tetanus, diphtheria, pertussis. The flu vaccine is recommended. The COVID vaccine is also recommended. These are all, non-live versions of the germ. But what we found is that because if mom had been vaccinated in the past, antibodies from mom cross the placenta. And if you give the MMR vaccine before 9 months, really, the antibody from mom does such a great job at like, oh, we found what we're trained, look at my targets here. The antibody like goes after it, gloms onto it, and then baby's immune system can't make a response because those antibodies are just like so good at what they do. So you have to wait until mom's antibodies, because it's a protein, they're going to be destroyed just like regular protein. So 9 months is the absolute earliest that one can be given, because we know by that time all of mom's antibodies are gone. So that I thought was interesting. Like they were like, oh, we should, early on they were like, oh, maybe we should give this one earlier. And then when they looked at the data, it was like, oh, maybe not. So anyways, I think that's kind of interesting. It just brings up another point of how moms transfer antibody to protect their baby. So any vaccine you get as a mom, that's your first way to be mama bear, is you transfer those antibodies to baby. So
yep, that's great. And just so you know, there are 5 shots that you get when they're infants at 2, 4, and 6 months of age. And that will be hepatitis. That'll be, if you didn't get it at birth, there's 3 shots for that one. So if you get it at birth, then sometimes you only need 2 more shots after that, depending on, if you go to the hospital, if you gave birth at the hospital, if you gave birth at the hospital and then you're in that clinic and they have all of, the same shots, you can do it that way. Sometimes some folks get all 3 shots anyway, and it's okay. It doesn't harm you at all. We are seeing a PowerPoint and a chart that only those of you on YouTube will be able to see. I would say that this is not that user-friendly, those CDC vaccination schedules. It's mostly for like clinical staff to sort through. I think for you guys out there in the world, I think just letting you know that there's a hepatitis shot, there's a rotavirus, which is actually an oral. Well, it used to be an oral, and then now it's they transitioned it to a shot. And then you have your diphtheria shot, your tetanus shot, and your pertussis. That's all in one. So you can't, those are 3 germs in one shot. And then you have your Haemophilus influenza type B. This used to cause devastation in the pediatric world back before the vaccine. Then you have your pneumococcal shot, which is for pneumonia. And then you have your polio shot. And then after 6 months, then you can get your flu shot. But you have to be 6 months old before you get that shot. And then for those of you to refer to for the measles, mumps, and rubella, we don't like to give it for the reasons that Dr. Aimee just discussed, before the first year of age, before 12 months old, but you can wait up until 15 months. So that's okay, right? So if you really listen, I just want to take a breath, that's okay. Going to 15 months is cool, but no later than that, right? No later than that for the most part. And that brings me to the delayed schedule and some of the things that folks have heard out there, and some requests by some parents who want to delay their schedule. They feel like it's just too much. It's overwhelming the immune system, and I don't want to do that to my baby. So we recommend against this delayed schedule, to be honest, because it's just there's no evidence to suggest that it does anything, I think that we were trying to compromise with parents. And I think that having a compromise and a shared decision-making is always important. But one of the risks of doing that delayed schedule is that you're just not getting the immunity boost that you really need. And that if in the time frame that you're delaying the vaccine, that your child gets in contact with that germ, they're not going to be protected. That's what's happened. They're just not going to be protected. And so I think, there's more of a conversation about why do you want to delay? If the answer that you're delayed, I think it's too much. Why do you think it's too much? Where is this coming from? It's not too much. It's really just not too much. It's not more than them going to daycare. They get overwhelmed at daycare, right? With the germs that are out there in daycare. So it's not overwhelming to the system. What is going to be overwhelming to the system is if they come in contact with this germ in the wild, they're going to be hospitalized. That's for sure. That's a for sure. Okay. So we're hoping that this gives you a little bit more confidence, but for the most part, delaying doesn't do anything but assuage your own fear. And keep you feeling like you're being active in not contributing to harm of your child. And we're here to say, if your baseline think that vaccines are harmful, we need to back up and have another conversation about vaccines, right? It's not okay, well, since you think it's harmful, let's just do less of it. That's not actually going to help the whole point. Let's get to the root of what it is that you're feeling. Where is this coming from? Why are you feeling so worried that something bad is going to happen? If it's autism, we've talked about that. That's in previous podcasts. If you want us to reprise it, we're happy to do that. I'll leave another link to the articles about that in the show notes, because I know a lot of people are feeling that, are still thinking that, right? But it's, we've talked about that ad nauseum. That there's no evidence to suggest that MMR vaccine in particular causes autism, or any of these vaccines necessarily cause autism. Autism is such a big spectrum of illnesses. We just don't know. We haven't wrapped our heads around exactly what the causes are. We're still working on it, right? And vaccines have been demonstrated not to could be contributing to that. That's unequivocal. That has been determined, as far as I know. Yeah, so yes, there are a lot of vaccines. There are more. There are measles, mumps, and rubella. We give the varicella around the same time for similar reasons that Dr. Aimee discussed. Hepatitis A is another vaccine that has come out, and that has changed. So back in my day, when I first started training, we only gave hepatitis A to folks that might be at risk coming from risky areas. But now we just give it. We just give it to everybody. We're just like, there's too much migration and globalization and all of that stuff. And so we just go ahead and give it to everyone. And then you have HPV and meningococcal, which are given later on when kids are a little bit older. Is when we give it, unless you are immunocompromised or there's some type of reason for the footnote. There are a lot of footnotes on these vaccines, and so depending on what your conditions are, you'll be eligible for some and not for all. It just depends. Again, understanding exactly what your health risks, what your children's health risks are, and what are you trying to protect your child from are the most important things. I think what we're going to see, because the vaccination rates are so low, are going back to being low again, are lower than we wanted them to be. We're going to see a lot of these diseases come back, and we're gonna see a lot of preventable death if we don't get a handle on this, right? So because a lot of the illnesses that I just talked about, the conditions that I talked about, the viruses that I've talked about, and bacteria that I've talked about cause death. Like it's like death and severe disability. And so why put yourself at that risk? But again, we're open to conversation. We want to talk to you. If you're like still stressed out about it, you don't believe it, let us know. What is it going to take for us to help you come across the line to believing that this is okay? And we're sensitive to that. We're sensitive to the fact that there's just so much misinformation. It's so confusing. There's new stuff every day that comes out. Mm-hmm. That's just, everything is so hyper politicized. And we're here to say, we're like not political about this at all. Like this is nothing to do with red or blue. This has to do with like life, whatever color life is. This is what this is about. And it's about, having everybody around to live what they're supposed to live, what they were put on earth to live out. That's what we're trying to see if we could prolong. So
yeah. Yeah. So, I mean, we agree. It seems like, there are quite a few things that we recommend that kids and even adults get vaccinated against. But again, it's for survival, trying to make sure that no one dies of or has serious harm or injury from a vaccine preventable disease. So that's really the bottom line. Like, trying to keep people alive and healthy and do the best that we can with the science that we have, so I think that's where we come from. And we're just trying to help people understand, like, why do we recommend all of these vaccines? And, there's a lot of science that goes behind it. Oh, so much.
Right.
Years and years and years. And I think it wouldn't even be a stretch to say millions of hours of doctors and scientists' time.
Oh, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But again, we encourage you, like, if there's something that we've said that doesn't sit right or you disagree, like give us some feedback. We would love to hear some feedback. We would love to hear from you to say, what is it that's stopping you from going forward? If it's something that's on your mind, again, if you've decided that there's nothing that we could do to change your mind, this isn't for you. This is for folks that are like, listen, yeah. I'm genuinely trying to wrap my head around all of this information. It's dizzying. I'm confused. I don't know what's right now. I'm just feeling like the energy out there is against vaccination, and I don't want to participate in something active that's going to hurt my child. I get it. Let's have a conversation about that. Let's talk about let's talk about that. And let's be, like bring to us what your fears are so that we can put them into context, right? Like, again, medicine hasn't always been fair to everyone. It has not been. It's been harmful. There have been a lot of atrocities in medicine. We get it. We hear you, and we get it, and we're not excusing any of it. But when it comes to this particular issue at this particular time, there's nothing under the sun that is demonstrating that any of it is harmful. If anything, the rhetoric against it is really harming our communities. And putting people who are super vulnerable out there to be more vulnerable. And so
I agree. In fact, I know that we don't want to politicize this in any way, but I was reading Scientific American actually put out an article, and they had a graph, which I'm not going to show, but you can look it up. They actually looked at death from COVID. So how many people died from COVID in counties that vote blue versus counties that vote red. And what they found across the board is that more people in red counties die from COVID. And it is shocking, the difference. It's not small. The people who are in those blue counties, there is more adherence to public health measures. There's a little bit more vaccination, things like that. And what we see is that this disinformation, this information that is purposely inaccurate, that some people are reading and seeing and hearing, it is actually causing more death in certain areas. And it's really makes me sad, because I think that there are a lot of preventable deaths, and it makes me sad and also really angry that there are people out there that are spewing misinformation and fearful, trying to cause people to not get vaccinated and to spark fear, and it's resulting in people dying, more people dying than should, by far. It's horrific.
Yeah. Yes. So hopefully this answered some of your questions. I think that's it. Those are the main questions I get. There's never really other nitty-gritty questions the way that COVID questions came, but for the childhood vaccinations was mostly about the number of it and overwhelming immune system and the schedule that nobody really has time to explain to you, right? So here we are explaining it to you. Hopefully this was helpful. And we're looking forward to having another chat.
If you have any ideas, let us know. We've got a couple of ideas, but we'd love to hear ideas from the people.
That's right.
All right. Until next time.
Bye.